Hey, welcome back to The Dive. Today on the show, we have the CEO of Emerita Resources, David Gower. David's joining us today to update us on all of the exciting news happening over at Emerita. He's also going to touch on a bit of macro and address some of the social media chatter the company hears online. Hey, David, welcome back to The Dive. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Okay, so David, let's start with the recent discovery of a copper-rich zone in the La Romanera deposit. Could you provide further details on the ongoing drilling program and the significance of the recent discovery?
Yeah, well, we're quite excited to see a very good copper intercept at some of the deeper holes that we've drilled to date. It's an important characteristic of many of the deposits in the region that they tend to have a very significant copper component, and we hadn't seen that up to now. So, for example, the Neves-Corvo mine of Lundin was primarily a copper mine. The first Quantum's Cobre Las Cruces up until now has been a copper mine. It's going to transition to a lead zinc mine in the future, potentially. Rio Tinto, of course, is a copper mine. So finding a copper zone is a very nice development because copper obviously is really the most important of the base metals in terms of industrial development, energy transition, etc.
How do the recent drill results from the La Romanera compare to the historical data?
We see a transition in the deposit where this hole was drilled. We're going from a true massive sulfide, volcanogenic massive sulfide, to more of a stringer or a stockwork zone that's copper rich. And this is very common with these types of deposits worldwide. Typically, the feeder zone and the very hottest part of the system, which is closest to the vent, tends to be copper rich. And then the lead and the zinc and some of the precious metals tend to come out higher up and around it where temperatures are cooler. So copper basically comes out of solution at higher temperatures close to the vent. And often, if you look at these deposits, this would be the core of the deposit. So we don't know that for sure in this case because there has been some structural deformation, and the copper zones tend to be the most altered, so they do move around a bit sometimes structurally. But it's a very nice development, and hopefully, as we continue to drill, it'll expand.
Joaquin Marino mentioned in the new release a change in deposit characteristics in the area. How might this influence Emerita's future exploration strategies?
Well, it really doesn't change much. The way we target the copper zone and the base metal zone is the same at depth. We're only down about 650 meters still, so we're quite shallow. But we use borehole targeting, and both types of ore are good conductors. At this point, they're part of the same deposit. So it's really just to continue to drill and quantify what's there. But if there is a very significant copper zone, it does add to the economics for the project.
Now, the company also recently announced that they would be conducting a drill program at the Nuevo Tintillo project. What can you tell us about this?
Nuevo Tintillo is a project that's it's located about 70 kilometers, I guess, to the east of the IBW project. It's a very large and strategic land position. The property itself extends for about 23 kilometers along strike, and it's sandwiched between really some very world-class deposits. So on the west side of the property, there's the very famous Rio Tinto mine, which is operated by Allocation out of the UK. And to the east side of the project, there's the past-producing Asnal-Coir mine, as well as First Quantum's Cobre Las Cruces mine. So we've got a very large and strategic land position on that belt that hosts these major deposits. Within that property, there are three small past producers that date back probably to a century ago. So the area where we're going to start the drilling is on the west side, which is closest to the Rio Tinto mine. And Rio Tinto, I think, holds the record as the largest volcanogenic massive sulfide in the world. So it's a good neighborhood. And we have about a half a dozen really interesting targets that our team has put together. The program, we started with an airborne EM survey last year. Did detailed gravity over the west side of the property closest to Rio Tinto. And that's an area where two of these small past producers are as well, and did detailed structural and geological mapping. And we see geologically very similar stratigraphy to what is hosting Rio Tinto, which you can see from there. So it's an exciting program, but it's early stage. At this point, we've broadly laid out about 11,000 meters of drilling, of which the first part of the program will be about 3,000. So, in the first 3,000, if we're successful, we've got the reach to continue the program aggressively. We won't have to take a break.
Okay, now David, let's touch on a bit of macro. How do you see inflation impacting commodity prices?
Well, typically in high inflation environments, commodity prices do what everything else does, and increase. The downside of that is operating costs and our supplies for developing the commodities also increase. So it's generally bullish, I would say, for pricing, and because these commodities are globally traded, they're fairly much a fixed price. That the operators don't control the price of lead or zinc or copper, but we can control our costs. So historically, inflation is not the worst thing that happens to commodity prices for producers. Broadly, I think, that's my humble opinion, and take it with a grain of salt. But broadly speaking to analysts also, their view is that we should see an interesting next couple of years for commodities.
Now, you mentioned Emerita has a large project package. How do you prioritize projects in terms of allocation of financial resources?
Right now, the focus is clearly on the IBW project, where we're advancing that through to a production decision as quickly as we can. We put out our maiden 43-101 resource in May. We're now doing the metallurgical work. The samples are at the lab. So later this year, we'll be able to restate that resource with actual metallurgical data to support the zinc equivalent calculations, which hopefully will improve the grade. And also at that time, we'll be able to add the new drilling that we have been doing. So the drilling has extended the deposit. The last hole we drilled is about 180 meters deeper than the deepest hole that was in that resource estimate. So I think sometime around the year end, when we have the metallurgy plus redo the model for the resource, we should be able to restate something significantly larger. Our intention is or we're at least contemplating applying to convert the license from an exploration license to an exploitation license, and moving forward with the permitting. So that's something the team is working on, and we'll make a decision on that sometime in the near future, I expect. We've also engaged a mining engineering consulting firm to start to put together the conceptual mine plan. And again, this is a critical piece for spotting the infrastructure so that we can proceed with permitting. You can't really permit in detail unless you are ready to say where the mill is going to be, where the tailings will be, and other infrastructure. So by the end of this year, instead of looking at this project as a bunch of holes on a longitudinal section, it'll start to look more and more like something that's going to be built and operating in the future. And that it's a pretty exciting time, really.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, now, David, the mining community and social media seem divided on their view of Emerita. How do you navigate this division? Does it have any impact on the company?
I try to stay away from those the online chatter to the extent that I can. Whenever I've engaged, it's done nothing but create grief for me personally, and it doesn't matter what you say in that forum. There's going to be, I mean, it's kind of like Twitter. People love to disagree, I think, and there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there, and they're certainly, some of them have a lot of experience, but they don't necessarily have all the data. So, trying to diligently stick to our official disclosure and forums like this, where people are welcome to obviously discuss whatever I've said, but I just can't address all of those comments in any meaningful way. And our larger shareholders never ask about it, to be truthful. So there's a lot of that chatter that is really noise and speculation, I would say. And that's it. I can only control what I control, and the rest is up to the ether.
Okay, one more thing before we let you go here. Is there anything else that you would like to share, any upcoming milestones or significant events that we didn't touch on that Emerita shareholders should be looking out for the remainder of the year?
I think, the main catalyst for us, a very important one, is the metallurgy, because the Roman-era deposit is quite rich in gold compared to the other deposits in the region. And when we did the resource estimate, the QP only gave us credit for 20% recovery of the gold. So there's about 800,000 ounces in that resource, and we're only counting 150,000 or so. So there's potential upside related to the precious metals on that deposit. So that's the first thing. The other thing is we are in good shape financially. We did a financing late May, early June. It was filled very quickly, and we still have all of that money and then some, because we still had some money in the treasury at the time. So we're in good shape to do the work that we need to do without necessarily having to go back to the market. So that's really it. Productivity through the summer there, very slow, because it gets over 40 degrees there daily. But yesterday was the first day in about a month where the temperatures didn't get to 40 degrees, and so we'll be back to full shifts. But while the heat is on, we're not allowed to drill during the daytime when it's hot. It's too dangerous. So, or any other heavy equipment is not allowed to operate. So everybody goes to the beach.
Well, that sounds more fun. Well, I think that's all we have for you today, David. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us the update. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's my pleasure, Cassandra. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Have a great day and enjoy the long weekend.
Thanks, you too. Thank you so much for watching today. If you liked this video or enjoy videos like this, consider hitting that subscribe button below me there so you don't miss out on our next one. Bye.